Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This is part 2 of my wrap-up of my latest wrap-up, I would say, in which I'm wrapping up both May and June. And then this is part 2 where I am wrapping up the books I read in the month of June. And I read a total of 9 books. I'm gonna try to do it quite quickly so we're not sitting here forever. Also because I have to go to the library to return some books, and then afterwards I have to go to train, so I have to be quick about this. So let's start with the very first book I read in June. And I read actually a lot of these books I read having in mind Asian readathon, which actually happened in May. And in May I actually haven't read a lot of books for this readathon, but it seems I have read all of the books for that in June, so there you go. But the first book I read was The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have read his other book Never Let Me Go last year. That is a dystopian, and this one is a historical fiction, and I loved it even more than Never Let Me Go. I loved this because of how the tone and the main character, and I just connected so much to him. So this is about Stevens. He's an older butler who lives in a great house in Britain. Throughout this book, he is going on a car journey, and throughout that journey, he remembers the days, his past days, where he was working as a butler in this great house and being in the service of this great aristocrat who was integral in the land's politics. Now, I think this book made me so emotional, and my heart constricted so much when I was reading about Stevens, because he is kind of the embodiment of his profession. It's like, it talks about a lot about how butlers are, or how butlers should be, and what is the perfect butler, and how butlers after the Second World War, where this currently starts, are not the way they used to be. They're not as distinguished anymore, and they just don't care so much about their profession. So it seems like throughout his whole life, Stevens cared too much about being a butler and cared too little about who he was as a person. And you read this, and the more you read about it, you realize how he was as a butler and what that meant for him and what he had to sacrifice for that, I guess. It's such a beautifully written book. There is a slight romance angle to it as well, and my heart just broke with every single page. The narrative voice of the butler and the way Kazuo Ishiguro writes this butler is just done so well. It's so beautiful. I think this has become one of my favorite books of all time. I haven't seen the movie adaptation, which is, I think, with Anthony Hopkins as Stevens, but I think I'm gonna watch that. But I'm not sure I'm not sure I want to. I think I want to wait a little bit, so distance myself from these emotions, which still feel so raw. And it's just, oh my god, I think you should definitely read this if you haven't picked up a Kazuo Ishiguro, or if you want to read some historical fiction, literary fiction. This is a great one, and I think this book will definitely stand the test of time, so I would categorize this almost as a modern classic as well. The next book I read was The Immigrant by Manju Kapur. I picked this up together with her other novel, Difficult Daughters, from a library sale, so I thought Asian Readathon is the perfect time to get to it. This one starts off in India, and then it is set in Canada. It is about an arranged marriage between this 30-year-old woman, unmarried, I guess. Being unmarried in India is quite the negative, and she's really stressed about being still unmarried at 30. So when she gets the chance to marry, she grabs it despite really wanting to marry for love. Her husband is an Indian as well, who emigrated to Canada, and he's a dentist there. So this is about how Nina goes to Canada and lives there, and in the beginning it's quite interesting because everything is new to her. She has these different cultural values and different attitude towards life than how things are in Canada. So it's interesting to see how she adjusts, how it's interesting to view a marriage, an arranged marriage from within, and how these two people interact and how this develops. But overall, I feel that this book, even though it had a great start, it like kind of flattened out towards the end. I didn't really see where it was going, and when it ended, I was a bit disappointed how it ended. It wasn't as strong in the second part, definitely. There are some weird elements in it because Nina's husband Ananda is really has sexual problems, and the book is really focusing on that. But I just thought that this point here was kind of weird, like focusing on his sexual and emotional issues. I would say it was too much focused on the sexual and not much explored from the emotional side. On the other hand, Nina is also kind of superficial towards the end. He's too much focused on herself. And I do understand that, because in India, I guess, from what I can tell, she was really taught to focus on her marriage, on her husband's wishes, and almost leaving her own wishes to the side because those don't really matter. So in that sense, I really like that she kind of started focusing on herself and doing things for herself. But I don't know, I just feel that this book was not really what I was expected, especially towards the end. There were also some parts which kind of I did not like, especially because both of these characters come from India as vegetarians, and they are kind of forced into eating meat despite of their beliefs. So it kind of feels that they are leaving. Understandably, you have when you emigrate, you have to kind of adapt to your new environment and integrate. But I just feel it weird that they left such an integral part of themselves and their beliefs behind and kind of ended up eating meat. I don't know why I picked on that specific detail out from this, but yeah, I don't know how to feel about this. I think I would give it a 3-star. The next book I read was Dominicana by Angie Cruz. This is actually on the short list of the Women's Prize for Fiction this year, so I'm happy I got to it, and I hope I will get to more of these, more of the books on the short list, but this was a great start. I really enjoyed this for what it was, but ultimately I felt that, I don't know, I just could not connect to it as much as I wanted to. So this one is about Anna. She is 15 and she is from the Dominican Republic. We meet her at the beginning where she still lives with her family, and they're really poor and they want to escape, and they see life in the United States as a great opportunity for them, and they would do anything in their power to get there. So when the option of marrying Anna off to this other Dominican older man who lives in the United States in New York, her family, especially her mother, really grabs this and really kind of forces Anna to marry. So she's 15 and she finds herself in New York where she doesn't know the language. She basically can't leave the apartment, and all she does was be in her apartment, clean, because when she gets there everything is filthy and she has to cook. And it's like basically what you find in this book is Anna being in her apartment and cleaning, cooking, and being with an abusive man and the man who cheats on her. And there's no love between them. I mean, Anna is 15, her husband is twice her age. So I guess, and this is also set in the 60s. So I was a bit disappointed in how it went, but ultimately I think what Angie Cruz wanted to do is take us on a journey of Anna's awakening and Anna finding her own path. Yeah, I would have wanted more from this, I think, but I will definitely check out Angie Cruz's other books in the future. I think I will give this as well 3 stars. Next, I listened to Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I actually went into this not knowing so much about it because I've heard so many great reviews that I just wanted to try it out and see what it is. This is a science fiction, dystopian, post-apocalyptic, character-driven book in which a virus kills 99.9% of the population. So we follow the last days before the virus really hits and kills the people, and then we follow 20 years into the future when there's a group of traveling actors who play Shakespeare plays for the small settlements around their area of, I guess, around the Great Lakes in the US, somewhere there. So I'm not sure this was a great book for me for this period, and I'm not sure that this was the best for me to listen to. I think I would have gotten more out of it by reading it. But that's beside the point now. It's done, I read it. So I think a lot of people really hype this book, and maybe I'm falling in the category of those who don't really get this hype. Or maybe I just read it at the wrong time in the wrong format, I don't know, but it just feels so random. It just feels so pointless. I don't know what this is about. Maybe because I was thinking at the beginning that this is gonna be like a fantasy, dystopian, post-apocalyptic, action-driven book, but it's not. This is very much character-focused. This is about how when we lose ourselves, when we lose society, and when we lose the practical things that we take for granted and which really maybe don't matter as much, what do we hang on to? Do we hang on to those electric things which don't work anymore, like our iPhone or our card or whatever, or do we care for art? Will art be the one thing that will keep our humanity? Because this is a world where everyone is in danger, people kill each other for nothing, so you really have to hang on to who you are as a human being. So that's what these traveling actors do by playing these Shakespeare plays. And it's interesting to see how soon we forget things that were so important for us. I mean, these people forgot almost everything in the span of 15 years, and when you think about it, there are kids who already in this world who grew up without knowing what electricity is, without knowing what an iPhone is, without knowing what a plane is and how it works, and just things that are so normal to us. So in that sense, I understand why people like this book so much, because it really teaches us how important art is and who we are as human beings, and how to keep our humanity, I guess. I guess this is what the book is about. But I don't know, maybe I should read this again and maybe read it a bit slower, because I was quite fast with it. But overall, I do enjoy it and I see why people like it, but I'm just not sure that this is for me. But I think I will pick up Emily St. John Mandel's newest book and then see how I go with that. But yeah, I think I gave this also about 3 stars. The next book was also one I listened to, and it was Sawkill Girls by Legrand. I picked this up because people say that this is similar to Wilder Girls by Rory Power, and I really like that. So this is set on an island which has a monster which has been killing girls for several decades. And it follows 3 girls and how they have to band together to fight this monster. So we follow Zoe, who is kind of an outcast because she really tries to figure out who killed her best friend, and she knows that something's up and just she kind of starts to connect the dots. We follow also Val, who is like a queen bee. She is very beautiful and comes from a local, very wealthy family. And then we have a new girl, Marianne, who is new to the island with her family, and her sister also disappears. So these three girls are kind of connected, and they're fighting together to kill this monster. I don't feel that these characters were really written out so well so that what they're doing feels believable. There's not enough of time given to their development, and there's not enough time given to ground them in the story and in what happens next. So despite being a great premise, I think it ultimately failed a little bit. I like though how there's an LGBT romance in this, and how the whole island is depicted, and how the people are kind of living together with this monster. I would rather recommend Wilder Girls by Rory Power if you want to read something like this, which is set on an island with a bunch of girls as main characters, also with LGBT elements in it. The next book was #1 Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Lee. And I actually did not finish this one. I have like 50 pages left, and I just can't. I really tried hard to finish this, but I just can't seem to connect to the characters. Even though I really like the characters, and I like the plot, and I like the premise of this book, but it just feels lacking somehow, and I can't even put my finger on it. So basically in this we follow a Chinese restaurant in the US and a Chinese American family owning it, and it is about them and their differences between the two sons who have inherited this restaurant, and their parents who have worked so hard to establish this restaurant and establish a name for themselves, and how it is a lot about the differences of culture. It is a lot about the differences between generations. But ultimately, I didn't see where the plot was going, because it did not have any of the twists and turns which I kind of expected. I think everything was just laid out, and then you could easily see where it was going. So maybe that's why I couldn't connect to it, because there were basically no surprises in this. The next book I read was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This book has been on BookTube so much. Everyone has read it. So when I saw it at the library, I decided to pick it up. It's quite a short one. I don't have it here with me because I had to take it back. But I really enjoyed it, despite it being so odd and so weird. I mean, Japanese books have this particular quality to them, which are so different, I think, from every other book I read coming from any other place in the world. Let me know if you feel the same way, or is it just me? But this is such an interesting story. We follow this older woman who has worked in a convenience store her whole life, and she cannot see herself working anywhere else. She basically cannot function doing anything else, because she knows this so much. This is all she is. So I guess similarly to Stevens from Never Let Me Go, our main character here is also her job, basically. Who is she as a person? She is no one, I guess, because all she is a convenience store worker. And similarly, Stevens as well was a butler. We don't know who this woman is, and she doesn't know it herself. I don't want to spoil it. I think you should read it and discover it. I mean, it's such a short book. You can read it so quickly, but it is so odd. It is great in how it represents women in Japan, and how it writes about how Japanese society, what it expects of women. So it is so interesting, and I will definitely check out if any other books by her are translated into English. I think this was brilliant. I really, really loved this. So I gave it, I think, 5 stars, 4 or 5 stars. The only thing is I read it in Danish, so I might have missed some nuances, but I think I got most of it. But yeah, I really love this one, and I highly recommend it. The next book is also one I listened to, and it is Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. This is my first Ann Patchett book, and it will definitely not be the last. I think she's so good at writing characters. This was though not the book I expected it to be, because I expected, out of the premise, I expected this to be some sort of a high stake, action-packed, dramatic kidnapping, hostage book situation. So I was kind of expecting an action movie, more or less. But this was so not that. This was so character focused and so beautiful. I really loved it, but I can't give it more than 3 stars, but I really, really enjoyed it, which is weird. So maybe I'll give it 4 stars. I'm not sure yet. Let me know if you have read it and what you thought about it. So basically, this is set in an unnamed South American country, where the country's elite and the politicians are holding this birthday party for this Japanese important businessman, because they want to attract his business to the country. The only reason this Japanese businessman agrees to come to this party is because they invited an American opera singer, and he's a huge fan. So they're all at this party together with a lot of foreign dignitaries, important business people, and all kinds of persons. So it's like really a mash of different cultures. And suddenly a group of terrorists attack this party and take them as hostages, because they want basically to take the president of the country. So it's so funny as well, because the president didn't attend this party because he stayed at home to watch his favorite soap opera. So what can the terrorists do now? They have all these people and everyone, I mean, the police is out and they cannot leave, but what can they do? They don't have the person who are they supposed to get. So basically they sit together in that house for I don't know how many weeks, and this is the story of how these people get to know each other and who these people are, and how the hostages interact with the terrorists, and how at the end they don't even feel like hostage and terrorists anymore. They're just people. They connected on such deep levels. And how at the center of this group is this opera singer, and how she holds this group together and almost entranced by her singing and her voice. So it was just such an interesting book, and many times I just thought, where is this going? What is the point of this? So I think that is why I was kind of disappointed. I think it's just such a unique and weird story, and I'm definitely gonna watch the movie. And the last book I read last month was Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi. I picked this up because this was on the Man Booker longlist, I believe, last year. So this follows different characters, but they all come together because of this monster, this Frankenstein, who is created by accident. So this takes place in Baghdad, in Iraq, during the American occupation of the city, where the country is at war. There are car bombs, there are assassinations, there's terrorists, there's suicide bombers. So everyone is afraid. All the people are dying, people are fleeing, people can't flee. There's just so many things happening, and it describes that sense of not knowing what to do and where to go and how to live. We follow this older woman who lives in her great house all alone because she doesn't want to go to live with her daughters who have emigrated, because she believes that his son, who has disappeared some 20 years ago, who went to war, is going to come back. And then we follow Hadi, who is a scavenger. He believes that these people who have died, their souls cannot rest because they're missing body parts. So she starts to stitch together a body, and then suddenly this body disappears because it has come alive. And this body, the Frankenstein, starts wreaking havoc in the city. People try to catch him, kill him. People try to join him and his cause, because originally he is fighting for injustice and he's killing the criminals. But ultimately this book is about what killing does to people, and it is a commentary on how we don't know whose part to take anymore when we're in the midst of it, because at the end killing is just killing, and there's no justified killing anymore because there are no innocent anymore. There's some parts I want to read out. So it is about fear and what fear does in this setting to people. Honestly, I think everyone was responsible in one way or another. I'd go further and say that all the security incidents and the tragedies we're seeing stem from one thing: fear. The people on the bridge died because they were frightened of dying. Every day we're dying from the same fear of dying. The groups that have given shelter and support to Al-Qaeda have done so because they are frightened of another group. And this other group has created and mobilized militias to protect itself from Al-Qaeda. It has created a death machine working in the other direction because it's afraid of the other. And we're going to see more and more death because of fear. The government and the occupation forces have to eliminate fear. They must put a stop to it if they really want this cycle of killing to end. So it is the fear of the other. And then who is this Frankenstein? And I believe he sums it up himself really well when he says, because I'm made up of body parts of people from diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, tribes, races, and social classes, I represent the impossible mix that never was achieved in the past. I am the first true Iraqi citizen, he thinks. So I really love its themes and the way I really love the way Ahmed Saadawi writes about this war, and it's almost satirical, comical, and the way he integrates superstition and folklore into it, because there's some magical realism elements to it. Of course, we have a body who has, Frankenstein, but there's also jinn and other beings in here. And I think I can see why this was on the Man Booker list last year, and I'm happy I read it. I think it's really great, and I gave it 4 stars. Alright, so these are all the books I read. I still can't believe I read so many books, but I think I managed to read 9 because I also listened to a lot on audiobooks. I think from out of all of these, the ones that I will remember and will stay with me most will be Frankenstein in Baghdad and The Remains of the Day. I think out of all of these, I would recommend you to pick these 2 up. Let me know though if you have read any of these and what you thought. And I guess I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.